For many gamers, the story of Sega starts with Sonic. Sure, they may be aware of the Master System, and they may or may not know that the Genesis existed for 2 years before Sonic made his debut, but it's hard to separate Sega from the blue blur that would become its mascot. What many people don't realize is that before the Genesis, before the Master System, before even the Japanese exclusive Marks 1, 2, and 3, Sega was a powerhouse in the arcades, and successfully ported its arcade games to the various consoles of the era. Hi, I'm Paul, and this is Indie Pop Productions, pop culture from an independent point of view. Today we're going to take a look at the life of Sega on the Atari 5200. Sega published 4 games for the Super System. We're going to take a look at 3 of those. Zaxxon is a bit expensive and can be a little hard to get your hands on. We'll circle back around to that one in a later video. For the other 3, we'll play a little and we'll discuss their history, their legacy, and their place on the Atari 5200. Before we get started, if you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Liking and subscribing and even commenting and sharing makes it easier for others to find the channel, but also makes it easier for you to find when I drop my next video. Now, let's go play some games. Buck Rogers' Planet Zoom, or just Zoom 909 in Japan, was a rail shooter Sega released to arcades in 1982. Focusing entirely on the ship, Buck Rogers himself never actually makes an appearance. From what little I could find online, it was never intended to be a Buck Rogers game. Zoom 909 stood on its own merit in Japan, but for the Western market, Sega felt they would have more luck by licensing Buck Rogers and slapping his image on arcade cabinets and boxes. At the very least, the licensing agreement didn't hurt. While not a massive hit, it was the 13th highest grossing arcade game of 1983 in the United States. It almost feels more like a racing game than a space shooter as you attempt to fly your ship between pylons without crashing into them. It briefly even made me think of Activision's skiing for the 2600, and trying to stay between the poles as you ski downhill. But in this case, extra fun is added as enemy ships fly from the top of the screen attempting to crash into you. Destroy a certain amount of enemy ships and you can move on to the next section. After a few sections like this, it's boss battle time. You face a much larger ship and have to destroy its engines before shooting down the ship itself. Back to the racing sections, rinse and repeat. It's not very Buck Rogers-y, but it is fun. Unfortunately, the home ports, even the one from my beloved Atari 5200 released 1 year later in 1983, take a pretty big hit. Worth playing on original hardware? Oh, absolutely. But if you're gonna emulate it, I'd stick to the arcade version. Congo Bongo was in many ways Sega's answer to Donkey Kong. You play as a mustachioed hero making his way across the screen to catch an escaped gorilla. But Congo Bongo is different from Donkey Kong in 2 major ways. First, in Congo Bongo, Sega uses an isometric view, much like with their arcade hit Zaxxon. Second, unlike Donkey Kong, Congo Bongo is terrible. To be fair, the early console ports are terrible. They just weren't capable of doing anything remotely like what was possible on the arcade, and they ported it to everything. Congo Bongo, or Tip Top in Europe and Japan, was a moderate success overseas but never really picked up too much steam in the US. To be fair, the arcade's graphics look very nice for a game released in 1983. It had 4 screens with a surprising amount of variation from screen to screen, but only 2 of those screens made their way to the Atari consoles. The 2600 port was so bad, one gaming magazine gave it the infamous distinction of worse than E.T. And it is. The 5200 port looks better, and even won a few awards for its graphics, but the gameplay is a mess. The isometric view has no depth to it. It's hard to see where anything actually is. When Congo throws fruit at you, I can't tell if it's coming towards me or to the side. And on the second screen, I regularly miss jumps that look perfectly lined up. I was told the game was bad, but I'm a collector and I wanted to find out for myself. A boxed copy of the game for the Atari 5200 at a decent price was hard to find. And I'm glad I have it. It's an important piece of gaming history. Just not a particularly fun part. Star Trek Strategic Operations Simulator, released in 1983, was the first arcade game using the Star Trek license. Unlike Sega's other licensed game of the time, Buck Rogers' Planet Zoom, which appeared to have the license slapped onto a generic game, Strategic Operations Simulator is Star Trek to the bone. As the name implies, you are on a simulated mission. For classic Trek fans, think the Kobayashi Maru, only without the no-win situations. You are presented with 3 screens, a small one showing your stats and vitals, a slightly larger screen showing the playfield, and a bigger screen giving a first-person view for targeting enemies or docking with bases. You go from sector to sector, stopping enemy ships, largely Klingon birds of prey, from destroying Federation starbases. You can also dock with starbases for repairs and refueling. There are bonus levels where you have to stop Nomad from the classic Star Trek episode The Changeling, who is filling the playfield with mines. With its vector graphics and immersive split screens, Star Trek was a hit for Sega in the arcades, so home console ports were inevitable. The name alone sold cartridges, but critical reactions weren't as positive as to the arcade. Porting it to home consoles meant losing the vector graphics and comprehensive controls. The 2600 version was simplistic, but still well loved by fans. The 5200 version is impressive. The sound is great, including the music, and you can clearly tell what each ship is meant to be once you get it in your crosshairs. If you're a Star Trek fan, you really can't pass this one up. Sega's games for the Atari 5200 range all the way from awesome, all the way down to why on earth was this ported to so many consoles? Hopefully someday soon I'll get my hands on a copy of Zaxxon. That is supposedly Sega's crowning jewel for the Super System. It's a weird little corner of Sega's history, and one many Sega fans don't even know exists. But without the experience of porting their games to other companies' consoles, would Sega have ever been tempted to create their own? So, cheers to Sega's games on consoles like the Atari 5200. Except for Congo Bongo. History would have been just fine without Congo Bongo. But what do you think? Have you played Star Trek, Buck Rogers, Congo Bongo, or even Zaxxon? What is your favorite pre-Master System Sega game? Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. Thank you for watching, especially those that made it all the way to the end. And as always, I'll see you next time.